it wasn't that early. I think it was, I want to say like 2010. I was living in New York City and I was like running a production company and, I went to film school and I just started to get so stressed out and my life was not working, my relationships were not working, and I just had this like deep well of anger and hatred coming to the surface and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. It was just like I'm a hell no to everything. And so I just pulled the plug on everything and I left. I was getting sick. I was getting like red stripes all over my body. I didn't know what it was. And I was just like, okay, I am just so done. And so I pulled the plug and everything. And in doing that, I was exercising my will. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. But I was like, wow, I have the ability to change my life. I can do that anytime I want to. Like literally, I pulled the plug on a big thing last week. I pulled the plug on a big thing the week before. I can just keep pulling the plug on whatever I want. It's amazing. And so I'm exercising my will. And so that's what I really overcame is the the law basically is you can always build your will. You can always make your will stronger. Your will can always exist in more dimensions and in more you can always create a new assemblage with your will if that's what you want. And so bringing the ability to utilize your will into spaces inside of yourself where there's that clenching and that fixation, habits from the family of origin, all your human stuff, you bring the will into that, it starts to really move things and things change quickly.
There's a couple of questions, but I'll go back to, so in my Chinese medical studies, there's a talk about the water element and fear. And then there's an overcoming sort of force to overcome some of the negative emotions associated with their five elements. And so I was told you have to use, how do you overcome fear? With willpower was one teacher's. And then, so that's an interesting fear. um, One of the Tao Te Ching pointers that I love this translation was, if you don't know when to fear, you are in fearful danger.
Hmm.
And so it kind of normalized fear. Like, hey, if you've got a large animal coming at you and you don't have fear, you're probably going to get eaten.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But then so if you have a bear coming at you that's probably faster and quicker and stronger than you as a human, is your willpower, could you theoretically project your willpower into the bear and make it stop, would be the question.
Yeah. So the will is what you want. So what you want, for example, might be for the bear to stop. What you're projecting into it is actually called intent, and that's the actual force of what you're throwing, right? Like the example I often give is like if you tell a dog what to do and you're kind of limp and you're like, go over there, dog, it's not going to work. But if you take intent, which is force, and you push it, the way dogs and animals actually see, they see the intent with their
Mm,
eyes. And so if you throw intent, a dog will be like, yes, master, and it'll go for it because you're actually like telling it what to follow. Like I'm thinking of like the greyhounds racing on the racetrack and they're like following that little thing moving, right? That's
right.
what intent is like. They go after it. So if you take intent and you throw it at the bear, it's going to feel it and it's going to pause.
But young kids seem to be the same way, right? I mean, I've taught age
Mm-hmm.
5 all the way up to adults, and it seems like,
Yep.
I mean, if you have wimpy, weak intent, they're going to eat you alive, it seems like.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so that is because the only reason someone would have wimpy, weak intent is because their will got all mixed into the socialized self of, be a good boy, be a good girl, and, behave. And there's all that like fear of disapproval from the tribe, which our will gets all locked up inside of that.
Right. So then, the modern world, I just got this thought about the modern world and all the messages that are coming in and the dumbing down of the masculine and the dumbing down of the feminine. And um, it, I mean, maybe you could respond to this too, but I almost think that there's, Star Trek kind of talked about it a bit of there's a psychic parasite feeding on fear in humans in the realm, in the world realm right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a big conversation probably, but in the Toltec tradition, there are so Toltec person of knowledge. Toltec means person of knowledge, but a Toltec warrior is known as a seer, someone who can see. And so there, like Don Juan or the seers today are known as the new seers, and
Okay.
before that were the new seers came before them, and before that, a long time ago, were the old seers, and the old seers were kind of learning the ropes. They didn't have the books and the teachings that we have access to today. They were figuring out what all of this is. They were coming up with the Toltec knowledge, the old seers. And so some of them went crazy, some of them died, some of them became so um, different from an ordinary person that they could no longer communicate whatsoever with ordinary people. And they ran a lot of experiments. And some of those experiments created big problems. And some of those experiments, they they created um, thought forms which became essentially like AI beings. They created these AI thought forms called the flyers, and these flyers thought forms were designed to like um, gather energy and bring them back to the old seers, but they became rogue and they turned on the old seers, and the AI won. So it's just like the Matrix, right? It's like the AI won. And so the old seers were overpowered by the greediness of these thought forms that they created. And so today, humanity is still enslaved by the flyers, by these thought forms. And so when we're awakening, when we're freeing ourselves, we are freeing ourselves from the mind of the flyers. And that's how the flyers control us, is they give us their mind. And so everybody has all these insecurities, which is something's wrong with me, I'm going to be found out, I'm a bad person, all this stuff. And that is actually the mind of the flyers, because the flyers are terrified of being found out, because if they are found out, then they're going to lose their food, which is humanity. And so we've been programmed to not even be capable of believing that the flyers exist. They hide kind of in plain sight that way, because it seems in human culture, it seems so far out that that could even be a possibility. That's exactly how they hide. They give us their mind so that we are fixated on self improvement because we think something's wrong with us. And meanwhile, we're having our energy totally drained out.
So is that related to what they talk about as the eagle in the Castaneda, like the feeding the eagle, or is that a different concept or different energy?
Yeah, it is different. The eagle is like a black hole at the center of the galaxy, and this is the recycling system that um, people die and the soul goes through that, then reincarnates on Earth. And so, as you become powerful enough soul, you're no longer susceptible to the gravity of that black hole.
Got it. Okay. That might help some of the people watching this that are familiar with the terminology at least, and I'll offer some links in the description, because I think that forging this path is, the word enlightenment. We want to, if you shine the light into the darkness, then the things are revealed that were in the darkness. Which, so, are you familiar with Rudolf Steiner and his work a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I couldn't quote him, but yeah, I know the idea.
So he talks about Ahrimanic forces, Ahriman, and the Luciferian forces and the Christ forces. And I kind of loosely came to the conclusion through talking to people that the AI force is the Ahriman. And so
Hmm.
this could be the flyer
Sure.
force, shouldn't it? Couldn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like there's only like I say sometimes there's only one knowledge, but it gets a bunch of different names,
Right,
right? There's only one reality happening,
right.
but you can look at it through, you know, different lenses of different religions and different philosophers. And so, you know, I was just talking about this the other day, like with consciousness, you can call it consciousness, you can call it the divine masculine, you can call it the nawal, you can call it, you know, as Jesus said, my father, you can call it a million different things, but there's only one consciousness.
Well, that's why I'm doing this kind of work to offer people like, when they talk about there's one absolute that breaks up into all these things that are observable phenomena,
Hmm.
and the Tao very clearly says, if you label the Tao, it's no longer the Tao.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because the label is always incorrect because that's what I was saying is like the difference between the Toltec knowledge and the Toltec teachings. The teachings are just for the first attention. The teachings are just for your mind, but the knowledge itself is indescribable, which is what the Tao talks about.
Which there are one of the things I cross correlate is um, one of my main teachers, Adyashanti, had a great saying, a great pointer. He just offered this one day at a silent retreat. He said, "The more I know myself, the less I know about myself."
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because you're submitting to the mystery of what can show up, and that's how I was talking about earlier. Like the human submitting to consciousness is like the more submitted you are, the more um, the bigger consciousness can show up and kind of give you commands and act through you, and the more mysterious it becomes.
That and then that the teacher that I cross correlate with was um, Krishnamurti, and he had a lovely saying that I believe is related to this, and maybe you could riff off of it. Was he said the moment the child labels the bird whatever a bird, he no longer quote knows the bird.
Yeah, yeah, because then he's in his mind, and instead of looking at it in truth, he's looking at it through a filter of a thing. You know, I had a session with somebody the other day. Um, we were sitting down, and I said, you know, look in front of you and tell me everything that you see. And he said, you know, I see a railing, I see a sidewalk, I see a bamboo tree. And I was like, okay, so let's erase that and let's look again. What if you saw um, forged iron,
Hmm.
limestone, and like leaves, right? Or even calling it leaves is still like a name, right? So it's like if you're actually looking at what's in front of you without all of the how can I use this ideas, then it subtracts that like colonized mind, right? And that's the mind of the flyers.
Oh, yeah, that is probably so helpful for people. Um, let's see about a couple more questions here. What do you think? Oh man, what do you think was your biggest inspiration in your life? Um, is there a person or a being that was your big inspiration, or a teaching, or maybe the current version of Joshua? We'll go to that.
Yeah, good question. You know, I've had so many amazing teachers. I must have had like 100 teachers, and um, as I was just making a video about this topic yesterday, as I become more powerful, I have grown out of a lot of my teachers. And so the ones who were inspiring to me at that time, um, stopped being inspiring to me, and then I went for, the next thing and the next thing. And so the teachers that I have now are, I get the sense like I might like fully get their teachings, but the teachers I have now are people I'm probably not going to outgrow. The teachers I have now will always be, um, at the very least, they'll be peers, because they'll always have, they have some kind of access to infinity, whereas my previous teachers didn't necessarily. And so, you could say that any teacher that has, oh yeah, this is what I want to say about this. Any teacher that has access to infinity is such a gift on this planet. And so, when they offer, a course, or they offer one-on-one sessions or something, like it might be like, here's the price of this session, or here's the price of this course, but it's like, from my perspective, whatever they're charging, it's worth it,
Mhm.
because it is like buying your life, right? It's like, how can you put a price on that? So the pricing is totally arbitrary for this kind of stuff, because you're buying reality, you're buying yourself back, you're buying your will. And so I'm just grateful that teachers are actually out there, um, putting this stuff into the marketplace as if it's just another product, but it's not. It's like, it's literally, you're buying infinity. That's what I'm really inspired by.
Oh my God, thank you for that. Because I just did a post about the things that I didn't really know what I was doing, like it was more like just trusting when I was younger. But what I realize now is um, Suzuki Roshi was once asked, you're all enlightened. What's important to you now that you're, quote, enlightened? And he said, oh, the most important thing is to know the most important thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Hmm.
So I translate that as how do I use my energy moment to moment? Am I leaking? How am I using my intent? How am I using my intent? Am I a leaky faucet anywhere? And where can I patch up those leaks? Right.
Yeah, yeah. And another way to say that is like, the most important thing is to be submitted to consciousness. And so when you're submitted to consciousness, it comes in as a command, and that's the most important thing.
And they're they talk about trust and faith, and I guess Carl Jung was asked if he believed in God near the end of his life, and Jung said, "No, I don't believe in God. I know God directly."
Hmm.
And so my last conversation with Adyashanti was about this. I said, so if I do contrived prayers, that's not good. And I go, so the best thing I can do is to try to align with that which already happened inside me. And he's like, yeah, exactly. There's a force that's always in the present moment, and your job, and I see those as prompts that come from consciousness. Like there's a prompt, like say this, ask this, do this,
Hmm.
and learning to
Hmm.
trust those prompts versus the I got to figure it out from the tonal, the first attention. It doesn't make
Hmm.
rational sense. And that's where I got stuck, I know, for many years. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
have to
exactly.
make sense.
Yeah, because the rational mind is very deeply programmed by the mind of the flyers. And so we think it has to make sense because, and here's revealing the motives, because if I'm doing something that doesn't make sense, it must mean therefore I am, for example, an idiot, or I am a bad person, or I am a weakling, or I am irresponsible, or I will fill in the blank, right? And so we get driven by this guilt for trying to avoid being this whatever, and it is a hijacked way of being, right? Our rational mind has been hijacked. And so if that's what we're basing our whole life on, what makes sense, we are willingly giving our power away to something which is not working in our favor.
Hmm. So with that segue, then I know you have a couple of projects you're running currently, and how people can interface with you. You want to talk about how people can interface with you and what you're doing? Because I think your work is amazing.
Thanks. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I do have a few things. I'm just about to release a book, which is called, I just changed the title. It's called Storytelling Wizardry. And it's kind of aimed, because I'm a filmmaker, it's kind of aimed at screenwriters, especially, but it could be for novelists or, and I do this thing called the quantum theater, which is like, um, uh, you could turn it into a performance art. So however, whatever format someone's telling a story in, the book is about the utilization of story for transformation. And that is, you could stay updated with it. At least it's not, as of this recording, it's not on Amazon yet. It should be there probably in a week. But storyweavingbook.com has the latest information about that. And I'll share something that's not actually announced yet, but it'll be announced soon. And that is what I call the dark lightning pattern interrupt performances. And so I'm going to be taking the quantum theater technology and going into businesses and whatever settings where there's some kind of stuckness, stagnancy, and I'm going to interview all of the people who work there and then have them all, after maybe a couple days, have them sit down, and then I will do these very ridiculous deep performances which unwinds a bunch of the energetics happening there, and like magic it's going to interrupt all of the stagnant uh, habits happening at that workplace, and people are going to just snap out of it, and they'll have a whole new lease on life and a whole new sense of creativity, and the business will be capable of totally pivoting in a way that it never could before.
Wow, that sounds absolutely amazing.
I'm
Um,
excited about that.
I was actually in the corporate world. I have a degree in business, so I worked for IBM and Unisys and JC Penney in an
Okay.
earlier chapter of my life.
Yeah.
But the thing that I took away from business was there's a there's the quote structural hierarchy, but I was in this office building in LA during the 1989 earthquake, and guess who the man with the most power was?
The janitor.
Yes, the head janitor, because he had a key to everyone's office and he had
Uh-huh.
everyone's ear. And I interviewed him and I'm like, "You're the man with the most power." And he kind of went, "Shh, don't tell anybody."
Exactly.
So you knew right away. I love that. You knew right away.
Yeah,
Ah,
and that's kind of what I am in when I work with people. If somebody's like really new to, let's say, personal development, they're gonna hire a coach. Somebody is really skilled, they're gonna hire a janitor. So that's kind of what I am. I come in and I'm like, okay, cleanup crew is here. What can we do?
oh, that's just wonderful. Is there anything else you want to add in here at the end? Is there a like you have another website you want people to go to interface with you or
Yeah, sure. Let's say what's so yeah, I have this Telegram group that you're a part of, which is a free group where people can kind of just keep updated, and I share some voicemails and stuff in there. It's called the Dreamwalker Foundation. Um, and where do I have a link to this? Well, I'll just give my I'll give this thing. I'm about to modify this, so it doesn't work today, but it'll work tomorrow.
okay.
So my last name is Ejhida, so Joshua Ejhida, which is Edjida. So I'm gonna make my main personal website ejhida.com, and that'll forward to my personal page, which has all this information on it.
Yeah, that'd be great because I think that there are those of us sort of, like I like the idea of one of my early teachers says, you teach what you want to learn.
Yeah,
Teacher was
exactly.
always a student, right? And I
Yeah.
like power can be so seductive. We see it around us in politics.
Hmm.
So I was always in that, okay, I got to be careful. Power is like holding a baby bird. I don't want to crush, the baby bird, but I want to utilize that power. So it's just a tricky dance, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the coolest things about teaching is like by giving teachings, it makes space in me for the next teachings to come through. So providing teachings has been like I literally learn something every time I'm teaching. It's amazing. It's uncanny.
Mhm. Right. Well, I knew that every one of these I've done, you're the fourth one. It's the hour gets up and I'm like, God, we could go another
Yeah,
hour.
right.
Easy.
Totally. Yeah.
And the art of conversation to me, I think David White, the poet, had a great lecture he gave years ago on the art of conversation. He says when you're really into it, you'll feel the tennis ball in your court.
Oh, uh-huh.
And then because you'll feel the energy like, okay, now it's my turn. Okay, now it's a flow, it's a fluidity again. It's back to that there's a fluidness to the conversation and
Yeah.
we both would feel it. It's like, oh, that was a little jerkiness right there. But
Yeah, yeah, that's funny because the very first video I did about intent, I am on a tennis court and I'm using a tennis ball as an analogy to describe it.
oh my goodness.
Hmm.
Maybe the mind came in and showed me that on some level.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, it's a great analogy.
Well, Joshua, thank you for giving us the hour, and I'm. If there's anything else you want to close with, we'll just end there. But is there anything else you'd like to close off with, or
Oh man, if I had I'm oh yeah, I'm gonna read something real quick.
okay, perfect.
I'm in the process of memorizing this right now, and so I haven't gotten it perfectly there yet. So I'm gonna read it. So there's this old there's this deity called Quetzalcoatl in the Toltec tradition. He's basically the first Toltec, the first sorcerer. And he incarnated several times, one as Jesus and one as Seatl in the um, I think he was a Mayan or something. This is like 1,000 years ago. And he left three commandments before he passed on. And so I want to read these three commandments real quick. I'm going to close my eyes and see if I can remember some of this. Seek with all fervor to befriend He who is everywhere, in all bodies and in each moment. For He is night and wind, and Lord of the intimate abode. Be at peace with all men, respect all. Don't react to others talking wrongly about you. Work in silence, and even in combat, learn to not react. Thus, you will show your virility and your nobility, and everyone shall know you are of me in your efforts to actively train yourself in the works of peace. And number three, do not waste the time given to you by Umateo, the divine dual trinity on this world. Labor day and night toward the good without wasting time, for you shall not know if you will live again, if you shall know your true visage there in the world of true existence. Take prudent advantage of your lifetime.
Thank you, Joshua.